You know, when you look up at the summer sky, you're not just seeing stars, you're actually looking at an ancient story. A story of love, of heartbreak, and a reunion that people have been celebrating for literally thousands of years. So it all really kicks off with this one beautiful phrase, Qīxi Festival. Now, what does that mean? It means reunion on the Magpie Bridge. Think of it like a poetic little clue, a key that unlocks the legend behind one of the most romantic festivals in East Asia. But what if that phrase was, well, literally true? I mean, what if two of the brightest stars you can see up there were actually star-crossed lovers, just waiting all year long for one single night together? That is the heart of the Qixi Festival. All right, so let's get into it. The story itself kicks off on a very specific date, the 7th day of the 7th lunar month, and it's this incredible timeless myth that plays out, you guessed it, across the night sky. So our two main characters, if you will, are actually two of the most brilliant stars in the summer sky. First, you've got Vega. In our story, that star is Zhinu, the celestial weaver girl. And then you have Altair, which represents Niulang, a humble mortal cowherd. So you're probably asking, how on earth does a celestial being and a mortal guy even meet, let alone fall in love? Well, their story starts with a chance encounter, one that was going to change the heavens forever. So picture this. Zhinu, this heavenly maiden, she decides to visit the mortal realm. And that's where she meets Niulang, this really kind cowherd. And just like that, they fall completely in love. They even get married and have 2 kids. For a little while, everything was absolutely perfect. But you knew there was a but, right? Their happiness didn't last. See, a union between a deity and a mortal, that was a huge no-no. It was strictly forbidden. And when the powers that be in the heavens found out about their secret marriage, well, let's just say the Queen Mother of the West was furious. So, in her anger, she takes her silver hairpin and just slashes it across the sky. And in that one motion, she creates this huge, impassable river of stars, what we know as the Milky Way, to tear them apart. Forever. Zhinu was dragged back to the heavens and Niulang was left on Earth, totally heartbroken. But their love was so strong and their sadness was so deep that it actually moved the birds of the air. I mean, all the magpies in the world, they saw what happened and they were so touched by their story that they decided they had to do something. And this is where it all leads. It all comes down to this one moment, just one night a year. On that 7th night of the 7th moon, every single magpie flies up to the heavens. Together, they form this shimmering, beautiful bridge of wings, just so the 2 lovers can cross that river of stars and be together for one single precious night. Okay, so that's the myth. But a story this powerful, it wasn't going to just stay up in the stars. It came down to Earth, and it inspired centuries of real-world traditions and rituals that eventually shaped the festival we know today.
What's really interesting is that the festival has another name that kind of gives away its original meaning. It's called Qīxī, which translates to the festival to plead for skills. And that name points us right back to our inspiration, Zhinu, the weaver girl, who was a master craftswoman. So traditionally, this night was really all about young women. They'd all gather outside, look up at the star Vega, and do these little tests of skill. A classic one was trying to thread a needle in really low light, like just by the light of the moon and stars. If you could do it, it was seen as a sign that the goddess Zhinu had blessed you with her amazing dexterity. And that skill wasn't just for crafts like weaving, it was also about hoping to find a good husband.
And of course, what's a festival without food and offerings, right? People would set up tables with all sorts of things, fresh fruits, wine, and these really special fried pastries called qiǎoguǒ. These were all gifts for the 2 celestial lovers. Now, like any living tradition, Qixi has changed over time. A lot. The festival today looks really different from how it started. So the question is, how did this ancient romance get reimagined for our modern world? Well, if you look at the timeline, the focus has shifted pretty dramatically. It started way back with these ancient rites tied to the stars. Then, in Imperial China, it became known as Daughter's Day, a day to celebrate women's skills. Fast forward to today, and most people know it as Chinese Valentine's Day, where the main focus is all about romantic love.
I mean, the contrast is pretty stark, right? The classic festival was for young women, all about skill and domestic arts. Today, it's for couples. So what happened? Well, as societies industrialized, the need for skills like weaving just wasn't as important. And at the same time, the global influence of Western Valentine's Day really helped shift the focus onto romance. So now, those ancient sewing tests have pretty much been replaced by romantic dinners, flowers, and huge commercial campaigns cashing in on the day of love. And here's the thing, even though Qixi isn't an official public holiday where you get the day off work, its cultural and commercial footprint is absolutely massive. You'll see cities all decorated, stores have huge sales, and yeah, for a lot of young people, the pressure to plan that perfect romantic date is very real. So when you step back and look at it all, what gives this story such incredible staying power? What's the everlasting bridge, so to speak, that connects this ancient myth to our world today?
Well, if you wanted to celebrate today, you'd say this: Qixi 快乐. It just means happy Qixi. It's a simple little greeting, but it's packed with centuries of myth, tradition, and so much emotion. Ultimately, I think the story lasts because it taps into something so universal: the power of faithful love against absolutely impossible odds. It doesn't really matter if you're praying for a skill or buying a dozen roses. The core idea is still about connection. It's about a bridge that can cross any distance, even a river made of stars. So we've seen the story of Qixi transform, right? It went from a tale about stars to one about skills, and now to a story of modern romance. It really leaves you with a thought, doesn't it? As our own world keeps changing so fast, which parts of our traditions are we going to carry into the future? And what stories will they end up telling about us?